This meeting is being held in compliance with the Brown Act. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. If a member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. For all members participating remotely, please ensure your microphone is muted when not in use. Please state your name during deliberations and whether making a motion or offering a second. Any voting member or member of the public calling into this meeting by telephone can press *6 to mute and unmute. All telephone participants should identify themselves prior to speaking. SCAG encourages all members of the public to participate in its meetings. We are committed to holding meetings accessible to people with disabilities. For members of the public requiring ADA accommodation, please call 213-236-1895. SCAG offers free interpretation services for members of the public needing information in another language. Please call 213-236-1895. The meeting will now begin.
Today is Thursday, February 5th, and the meeting of the Community Economic and Human Development Committee is now called to order. Let's gavel today. As a reminder, if any member of this body is attending remotely but is not at a location specified on the agenda, they may observe and comment as a member of the public, but may not participate in any member discussion or voting of this body. And for the Pledge of Allegiance today, I will ask the Honorable John Gabbard to lead us.
Take right. Hand over your heart. Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, may we confirm a quorum today?
Chair, yes, we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will now open the general public comment period of the meeting. This is a time for members of the public to offer comment on matters that are within SCAG's jurisdiction, but are not listed on the agenda today. Staff, have we received any written public comments after the deadline of 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 4th, 2026?
Mr. Chair, we did not receive any written public comments after the stated deadline.
Okay. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak today? Seeing no hands raised.
I do not see any members of the public wishing to participate.
I will now close the public comment period for matters not listed on the agenda. And I don't expect it, but if there's anyone who wishes to review and prioritize items on the agenda, please let me know. Either raise your hand, your card. Seeing none. Before we take action, we'll start with the consent calendar. Let the record reflect that there's a typo on page 10 of the minutes. Member Wendy Bucknum Toyboat represents District 13, not 40. And do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, the consent calendar?
Mr. Chair, I do not see any members of the public wishing to participate.
Okay. In order to save time, if anybody wants to pull anything from the consent calendar, I'll ask that we have staff present before moving to the roll call vote for the consent calendar.
I'll move the consent calendar. Thank you for noting the correction.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do you need me to, do you have that?
No, I didn't get the second, but thank you.
Honorable, you were Honorable Cecilia Hupp, yes. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Can we please go ahead with the roll call vote?
Yes, we'll go ahead with the consent calendar. Cindy Allen?
Aye.
Yeah, okay.
Valerie Amezcua,
Oh, here's everybody.
Joe Baca, Debbie Baker,
Aye.
Wendy Bucknam,
Aye.
Tanya Doby, Doris Parada, Keith Ike,
Yes.
Shauna Elias,
Yes.
Bob Engler,
Yes.
Rose Espinosa, Wayman Furman, Mark Fuentes, John Gabbard, that's all.
Should I abstain?
You're not required to abstain, sir.
then-
You can vote if you like, and it's also your prerogative to abstain.
Yes, thank you. Victoria Garcia,
Aye.
Gary Gardner, Mike Gussel,
Yes.
John Grass,
Yes.
Mark Henderson,
Yes.
Peggy Wong,
Yes.
thank you. Cecilia Hupp,
Yes.
William Hudsey,
Yes.
Linda Johnson,
Yes.
Megan Kerr,
Yes.
Matt Levere,
Yes.
Jet Liano,
Yes.
Annie Marshall,
Yes.
Betty Martinez Franco,
Yes. Yes.
Andrew Maciel, John Mirish,
Yes.
Geneva Mojado,
Yes.
Joseph Marabito,
Yes.
thank you. Cynthia Moran,
Yes.
Rocky Rhodes,
Yes.
Sheila Rossi,
Yes.
Sunny Santinez,
Yes.
David Shapiro,
Yes.
Becky Shevlin,
Yes.
Mary Solorio, Helen Tran,
Yes.
thank you. Valerie Vandiver, Equinetta Warren,
Yes.
Jeff Wood,
Yes.
Judy Woolsey,
Yes.
Tony Wu,
Yes.
Frank Yokoyama, and Frank Zeranian. Okay, Chair, with the correction noted to the minutes, the consent calendar item 1 and receive and file item 2 passes with 36 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to information items. And today we will receive an information item on the importance of the community development funding programs and how these programs can be strategically leveraged to address local needs and to align with our long-term planning goals. We will hear presentations from 3 speakers that will share best practices and resources for the city. First, Anika Van Isle, Senior Regional Planner at SCAG, will present on the importance of community development funding programs. Next, Diana Sasser, Managing Director at Grow America, will discuss brownfield redevelopment and the role of financing tools in advancing community and economic development projects. Finally, Jeanette Ortega, Deputy Director of Administrative Services at the City of Placentia, will present on their work to develop an enhanced infrastructure financing district in the City of Placentia. Once all 3 presentations have concluded, we will invite the public to provide comments and thereafter receive questions from our committee members. I will now call on the first presenter, Anika Van Isle, to begin her presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. Now you can all hear me. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Good morning. My name is Anika Van Isle, and I'm a Senior Regional Planner here at SCAG in the Community and Economic Development Department. I am pleased to introduce our first information item of the day, a discussion of community funding programs and how they can be leveraged to support your community's planning goals. Today, I will start off with a brief introduction to community development funding programs, followed by a discussion of brownfields and community development block grants and other community development funding strategies. This will be led by Diana Sasser, Managing Director at Grow America. Next, we will hear from Jeanette Ortega on the City of Placentia on their experience developing an enhanced infrastructure financing district and their Old Town Streetscape Master Plan. Finally, we will wrap up with a Q&A led by our Honorable Mr. Chair. Across the region, we see that cities are facing growing demands to provide more for residents. More housing, more workforce and economic development opportunities, more parks, and more social services. Yet at the same time, cities are increasingly financially constrained with tightening budgets, fluctuating revenues, and uncertain financial landscape. This tension between rising community needs and growing fiscal constraints requires cities to examine how they plan, finance, and coordinate community development efforts. In doing so, cities have the opportunity to leverage community development tools and funding programs to further their long-term planning goals, while also guaranteeing that their investments are strategic and equitable and can meet the evolving needs of residents. So when we talk about community development, what exactly do we mean? For the purpose of today's discussion, community development can be understood as a comprehensive and integrative approach to strengthening communities. Community development activities include a wide breadth of activities, including housing production, preservation, and affordability, community parks, trails, libraries, and other public facilities, economic and workforce development programs, social services, walk, bike, and roll supportive infrastructure, utility improvements, and also other quality of life improvements. With strategic investments in community development, cities can build stronger and more resilient local communities. This discussion today is set in the post-redevelopment era. As many of you are aware, all 400 California redevelopment agencies were officially dissolved in 2012, ending a system that was in place since 1945. Today, in this post-redevelopment era, cities have experienced large shifts in the availability of state and federal funding for large-scale projects, meaning that cities have lost a powerful and flexible financial tool. This loss of funding has led to a patchwork of programs and tools ranging from state competitive grants to local financing districts to finance development, each with its own rules, limitations, and timelines. This fragmented landscape requires more coordination and creativity from local governments than ever before. As a result, cities have increasingly relied on public-private partnerships, grant programs, and value capture mechanisms such as enhanced infrastructure financing districts, or EIFDs, which we'll hear a little bit about later, to support and fund long-term community investment and community development. So today we will hear from two presenters who will highlight some of these tools in practice. First, we will hear from Diana Sasser, Managing Director at Grow America, a national community development financial institution, also known as a CDFI. We'll discuss brownfield redevelopment and the role of financing tools in advancing community and economic development projects. Next, we will hear from Jeanette Ortega at the City of Placentia, who will present the City of Placentia and County of Orange Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, also known as EIFD. This was one of SCAG's first pilot EIFD projects and also the first city-county EIFD project in California. I will now pass it back to Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I will now call on our next presenter, Diana Sasser.
Thank you. Sorry for my voice. I'm getting over a cold, but hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yes, feel better, and we're glad you're virtual.
Yes, exactly. I am too. So I'm here today to talk about different financing strategies, including brownfield and CDBG and other financing stuff. Let's see. So the importance of economic and housing development finance was already kind of touched on, but just to kind of go into it, the reason why we're here to help these communities is small businesses need low-cost, long-term capital to expand and succeed. Like if banks are more interested typically in larger businesses because they're safer, they're easier to do bigger loans and get paid back quickly. So small businesses need something in place to help that even out. Real estate developers also need capital and operating incentives in order to get an acceptable return in distressed communities, in order for us to get some development in those communities. And communities obviously need infrastructure and amenities. In order to make these projects work with limited resources, we got to find different ways to either reduce development or operational costs, provide capital, or attract outside equity. So ways to reduce costs include things like you can phase or reduce the project. There are grants available to do some of the work in the beginning or provide the funding to do the cleanup of the site. Can discount or have donated lands. There's tax abatements out there, utility rebates. The sources are tax exempt bonds, general obligation bonds, private activity bonds. There's TIF, but TIF is very limited in California. And then there's HUD programs, CDBG and Section 108, which I'll go into detail. There's EDA programs that can establish small business loan programs, as well as USDA loan programs, SBA, and then obviously public revolving loan programs that some communities have. All right, so what is a brownfield? Brownfield is kind of the source of many infill projects. Almost every infill project will start as a brownfield because it is real property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. So basically, if you're not sure what was there before, you got to do assessments of it to find out what was there. And EPA has established programs to help you try to figure that out without you having to pay a lot of money. They have a technical assistance program where they pay for a TA provider to come into communities and help them figure out their brownfield sites. They have brownfield assessment grants. So you can apply for an assessment grant to create an inventory of your infill sites. You can do planning for your sites. You can do your phase 1s and phase 2s. And you can do some community outreach to find out what you want to do with that site. There's also brownfield revolving loan fund grants. So this is a grant from the EPA where you turn around and create a loan program for cleanup of sites. So say a developer is trying to clean up a site and but they don't have enough funding and they need $500,000. If you have this grant, you can loan $500,000 to that developer at a very low interest rate, which can be very attractive because many banks won't lend at a very low interest rate to brownfield sites because they're very risky. Brownfield cleanup grants. These are specifically cleanup grants for property owners that they have to be a government or nonprofit for reuse. And then there's area-wide planning grants by EPA. They research, plan, and develop implementation strategies for cleaning up and revitalizing areas. In addition, there's California state grants and loans. There is the ECRG, which actually is currently on hold. I think they want to do a round 3 if they can get funding for it. But the funding for community-wide assessments, environmental investigations, and cleanups came out of ECRG, and it's been a really successful program. We actually used it on a site in San Bernardino over the last few years. There's also the Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund Grant Program. They have an ability to loan or grant funding out to communities for cleanup of sites. There is, in addition, there's cleanup loans and environmental assistance to neighborhoods program. They loan for the cleanup of hazardous materials where redevelopment is likely to have a beneficial community impact. And then there's their investigating site contamination program. It's a loan to conduct preliminary endangerment assessments. So those are the California programs. To go into more detail, like I said, Grow America actually received a grant from the state of California under the ECRG program for this a site in San Bernardino called Casa Ramona, for those of you guys that know it. It was a former early child care center that actually had a fire a while back, and because the building was so old, it had asbestos and lead that were exposed due to the fire and demolition of the building. So the grant allowed us, you can see in the picture above, it had tons of contaminated debris. We had to safely remove it. We actually received a no further action on the site recently, and we are working now to get it ready for development. We're going to be doing some community engagement and hopefully figure out what the next steps are for development of the site, which is in the middle of a local neighborhood. CDBG is another program. Many of you probably have heard of it. Eligible projects must meet one of 3 national objectives: benefit low and moderate income people, prevent or eliminate slum and blight, or meet urgent community development needs. The primary objective, though, is to benefit low and moderate income people. Not less than 70% of the overall allocation must be spent on those activities. These are the eligible activities. They can be used for acquisition of real property, public services, relocation, housing rehab, new construction, economic development, many different things. It fits a lot of different things. What happens is a community that does get this funding has to outline what their plan is to use these funds in a 5-year plan. There is flexibility in it. You can create programs for loans, grants, and interest write-downs. And it can be used across the region for business incubators, technical assistance. You can set up revolving loan fund programs, whatever works for your community. In addition to CDBG, we can use Section 108 as basically 5 times of your CDBG can be created into a Section 108 loan program. So anything that's eligible under CDBG is eligible under Section 108. So like I said, it's 5 times the approved entitlement, less any outstanding commitments. So if you already have outstanding commitments, you have to reduce that amount, and then you can multiply it by 5. You have to pledge current and future CDBG funds to get the loan. And the repayment term is over 20 years, but it's got flexible principal amortization. And additional resources that are out there in addition to brownfield resources and CDBG and Section 108, just so you guys are aware, there's opportunity zones 2.0. Those rules are just rolling out right now. We are partnered with CDFA to be doing some classes on that. So if you're interested in that, I'm happy to send that along. There's new market tax credits. We are actually a community development entity that can provide new market tax credits to projects. So, we have done that in the LA area recently and in San Bernardino. There's also iBank resources. And then just as a reminder, there's a technical assistance provider for brownfields. The one for California is Center for Creative Land Recycling, otherwise known as CCLEAR. And then Grow America is actually the newest technical assistance provider for the revolving loan fund program under brownfields. And I'm so sorry my voice is going, but I hope you guys can hear me okay. And I think that's it for me, so you don't have to hear me anymore.
No, thank you. Stay on for questions. Rest up your voice. You great and feel better. Thank you. We'll now move to the next speaker is Jeanette Ortega.
Yes. Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss Placentia's Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District and our Old Town Streetscape Master Plan. Today, I will provide an overview of the master plan and explain how the city is utilizing an EIFD to fund public infrastructure improvements in Old Town in a manner that accelerates revitalization, encourages private investment, and delivers long-term economic benefits. Okay, apologize, I'm having issues with the slide. The city began working on the Old Town Revitalization Plan in 2015 with the goal of preserving its historic character while enhancing public infrastructure. As part of this effort, the city developed specific building standards and zoning requirements throughout Old Town. The city also prepared a streetscape master plan to improve street design and enhance pedestrian connectivity. Over a 2-year period, staff conducted more than 20 meetings with residents, businesses, and key stakeholders. This collaborative process resulted in the city's adoption of the Old Town Revitalization Plan and the Streetscape Master Plan in 2017. Immediately following the adoption, the city began identifying funding strategies to construct the public infrastructure improvements outlined in the Streetscape Master Plan. So the purpose of the Old Town Streetscape Master Plan is to revitalize Placentia's historic core. Many buildings in Old Town are over 100 years old, making rehabilitation and revitalization a central component of the plan. The plan focused on creating an active, walkable gathering space. Our goal is to improve mobility, enhance infrastructure, and ensure public safety in the area. The plan would support special events and economic activity, which would ultimately attract visitors and increase local revenues. Overall, it would create a more vibrant, connected, and economically resilient Old Town. So the scope of the improvements as shown here includes landscaping and lighting upgrades, enhanced pedestrian mobility features, outdoor furnishings such as benches and bike racks. We had a focused effort to enhance public amenities, including wider sidewalks to support outdoor dining and the addition of bike lanes. The plan also includes street enhancements such as pavers and bollards. These improvements are designed to support temporary street closures for future farmers market, car shows, art festivals, and other community events. To support these improvements, the city evaluated several potential funding mechanisms to help offset construction costs, including the use of an EIFD. As many of you know, an EIFD is a financing tool authorized under California law that allows jurisdictions to fund public infrastructure without raising taxes. This was very important in our messaging to our community about what an EIFD is. EIFD can fund transportation, street, housing, parks, and economic development projects, making them particularly well suited for Old Town revitalization. EIFDs rely on tax increment financing generated from the incremental growth of assessed property values. When an EIFD is established, a baseline property value is set based on the assessed value in that year. Afterwards, a pre-designated percentage of incremental growth is captured and dedicated to the EIFD to support its intended purpose. Placentia's EIFD baseline is 2022. Any incremental growth in property values after that year, specifically 50% of the tax increment growth from both the city and the county, is deposited into the Placentia EIFD. In 2019, the city and the county of Orange, with assistance from a grant provided by SCAG, established the Placentia Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. The City Council conducted a comprehensive feasibility analysis to confirm that an EIFD would be a viable funding mechanism to finance infrastructure improvements in Old Town. The primary objective was to implement the Streetscape Master Plan in its entirety, rather than through multiple phase projects. In doing so, the EIFD attracts private investment, accelerates tax increment growth, supports regional housing goals, and reduces long-term construction costs. An economic benefit analysis was also conducted and found that an established EIFD in Old Town would support the construction of more than 16 housing units, create over 5,300 construction jobs, and 258 permanent jobs. It would generate $826 million in construction-related economic output. It would produce $38 million in ongoing annual economic activity. It would result in $59 million net fiscal benefit to the city and $50 million benefit to the county over a 50-year period. This includes property turnover and additional sales tax. Lastly, it would reduce vehicle miles traveled and improve transit access by prioritizing pedestrian connectivity and encouraging walking and bicycling in Old Town. This illustration shows the parcels included within the EIFD boundary. 50% of the tax increment generated from these parcels is set aside and deposited into Placentia's EIFD fund. The city experienced some lessons learned throughout this process. Following the establishment of the EIFD in 2022, the city identified the need to amend the district due to several challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic was occurring, inflation, which increased project costs from approximately $8 million to $10 million. We also experienced higher interest rates that increased borrowing costs. The original structure required multiple debt issuance, and a phased implementation would have also been very, very costly. To address these issues, the city and the county approved amendments that extended the city's participation term to 40 years and the county's term to 25 years. All amendments were fully approved in 2024, following a process similar to the original EIFD formation, including multiple public hearings, board and council approvals, and extensive public noticing requirements. This process took approximately 1 year to complete. And so at its meeting this past Tuesday, the City Council approved a contract with Cosmont Financial Services, who will serve as the city's independent registered municipal advisor to assist with the city with financial analysis and bond issuing planning. Instead of issuing EIFD bonds, the city will issue 30-year lease revenue bonds. This approach is being used because the EIFD bond market is relatively new. The Placentia EIFD has no established credit history as a new issuer. This strategy allows the city to leverage its strong bond AA credit rating, resulting in lower interest rates. The city will loan the proceeds to the EIFD, with interest payments returning to the city's general fund. The EIFD will terminate once all debt has been fully repaid. As mentioned earlier, the EIFD was established in 2022. Tax increment has been collected since that time. Actual tax increment revenues have generally tracked closely with projections. To date, approximately $510,000 in tax increment has been received, demonstrating that the district is performing as expected. Tax increment is collected annually, with payments received in May. So the city is currently using $150,000 in existing tax increment funds to complete final design and construction drawings for the streetscape master plan, accumulating sufficient tax increment to meet the $1 million threshold required for bond issuance, as recommended by the City Council. This effectively serves as a $1 million down payment on a $10 million financing package. The city is anticipating its next tax increment allocation in May, along with a potential federal earmark that would help advance progress towards the $1 million goal. Once design is complete, the project will be released for bidding. Alternative bid options are being included to help ensure that the project remains within $10 million. These options include potential cost-saving measures such as replacing certain concrete or pavers with asphalt and removing improvements on streets outside the primary corridor. These measures support the city's goal of financial sustainability and minimizing impacts to the general fund. Staff will ultimately seek City Council approval for final construction costs and the EIFD financing structure.
Thank you very much for that presentation and all three. I'll now turn to questions and ask if there are any members of the public wishing to speak on this item, questions or comments.
Mr. Chair, I do not see members of the public wishing to participate in person or online.
Okay, I will now entertain comments then from members of the CEHD committee, starting with in person and then, of course, to those virtually with hands raised. We'll start over right here in the room to the Honorable John Mirisch.
Thank you so much. So I want to thank the presenters and just a couple of thoughts. The brownfield, we have some brownfields in the region. I'm thinking of, the Inglewood, for example. There's a whole area of oil fields that at some point maybe will not be producing, and that would be of interest for that area. And I also think it's great the use of EIFDs to do things. I just want to give a brief overview of what we've done in our city. You can also use CFDs, community facility districts, and I'll give one example there where we passed one, and the city was going to issue bonds, and it was going to help a very major project there. And I just want to advise that whenever you do CFDs, there is leverage that you may have to negotiate benefits for the city. And in that case, I was initially opposed to it, but then I was able to negotiate with the developer that we would get what's known as an EMS fee, meaning that each time that a unit sells, we have something in place that we get a percentage of that, but upon second sale, we would get an additional 1%. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but we did the calculations over 30 years and it could yield up to $140 million for the city. So it's something that we should be aware of. There's the ability for us to negotiate when it comes, and we should think about that. The other thing I just wanted to briefly mention is, as we're all struggling to get money, and as some of these state mandates are actually creating increased costs for us, we need to have more police, fire services, parks, and that sort of thing. And I know our city is doing it now, is a lot of the state laws say these shall not be considered unfunded mandates, which are not legal under Article 13B, Section 6 of the state constitution, because we have a right to charge fees and taxes. Well, we're doing what's known as a nexus study to show exactly the costs to the cities of all of these additional provisions. And I think all of us understand and know running a city is not cheap. And so a nexus study allows us to show exactly what it costs, and then if we want to pass those costs on so that we can recoup them, and that we're not forced to go into debt and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to say, in addition to EIFDs, CFDs, and we should all be considering, and maybe we can do a presentation at some point on nexus studies and what they can provide for cities so that we're able to keep up with a lot of these mandates from the state, which are not supposed to be unfunded, but which in many cases actually are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, the Honorable Sheila Rossi.
Thank you. For those of us not familiar with EIFDs, I just wanted to see if you could walk through how that works a little bit in more detail. I was struggling to follow on how that program works.
Yeah.
That was a question.
Oh, okay. So EIFD, it's through state law. And so what the city first conducted was a feasibility analysis to determine if this EIFD would be suitable for Old Town. It looked at all the economic benefit analysis, and ultimately we sat down with City Council and reviewed the report, determined that this would be a viable source. So that would be the very first step. And we're really grateful for SCAG to come in and help us fund a feasibility analysis, because it's very comprehensive. It really looks at every parcel in Old Town. It looks at its history, property tax history. It looks at our zoning in the area, the development standards. It's very comprehensive, and council felt very confident that an EFD would be successful. So that was the first approach. And then we met several times with the County of Orange to discuss our interest in pursuing an EIFD. And EIFD allows other taxing agencies to participate. It's all voluntarily. So we met with them and they looked at our analysis and felt confident that if they participate, and once an EIFD is established, they'll get a higher return of investment as far as tax increment coming in the long run, versus literally not doing anything and letting Old Town stay as it is right now. So once we got those kind of approvals from the county and the city, we started to work on the appropriate resolutions needed to implement the EIFD. We started to do the multiple public hearings that are required for an EIFD to be established, which is notifying every parcel in the area that would be affected. We had meetings with property owners, meetings with the business owners, and I think the misconception was, is this going to raise my property taxes? Is it going to raise taxes in general? And that's not the case. And so we had a lot of meetings and really educating the community, educating our council, and we approved it and made sure that we followed the guidelines as set in the state requirements. So
I'm sorry, I guess what I was trying to understand is the math and how the math works on it. So, so the incremental tax revenue going into a special fund separately.
yes.
What is the difference then? In the cities, as property values go up, the cities already receive incremental tax revenue. So what is the difference in this mechanism? That's what I'm trying to.
So the difference is that when we receive the incremental tax value, 50% of that has to be dedicated to the EIFD, where otherwise it would be spent citywide. So this is a requirement that 50% of the parcels that are within the EIFD is dedicated to funding the streetscape master plan in Old Town.
So in a sense, though, then the cities aren't receiving additional funding. They're just using it as a way to cordon off funding and say that we're going to use it for the specific space. Is there a count?
No, I think
component?
the county, no, the city does get more.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
So we receive 50% from the city's funds as well as 50% from the county. So
county's portion that helps actually with the EFID program.
And the state.
correct.
And the state as well.
And school district, right?
Not necessarily. School districts are exempt from EIFD participation.
And I'll note, Member Rossi, we developed a case study document that provides kind of EIFD 101 with some case studies that we can share out to the members as well.
Okay, that would be awesome. Thank you. And I think I want to also concur that with the state unfunded mandates, challenges that cities are having, especially those that have a lot of infill. We are a city that's already underparked and under green space, and I'm not sure how we look at financing to be able to add green space at the same time as having mandates that say we need to fill every piece of land, including move back our set. Like I'm looking at this beautiful plan and I'm looking at our Old Town and thinking, how does this work with the state mandates that we have to change our setback requirements at the same time? I think we're struggling to understand how these pieces work together and how to fund them. And you mentioned Cosmont, and he had spoken quite a bit about TIFs. So I was curious about why TIFs are restricted in California. So that's another technical question, but I don't want to take up all the question time.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good questions, and maybe some discussion for a later meeting that we can put on an agenda. I have next the Honorable John Gabbard, followed by Honorable Gary Gardner, Honorable Jeff Wood, and the Vice Chair, Rocky Rhodes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Jennifer and Jeanette for a great presentation. I'll keep this short. Capital and cost of capital are always drivers in any development project. So on the capital side, in the loan 108, is there a cap on the amount of the loan amount?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Is there a cap on the loan amount under Section 108?
Yeah, well, so yes, it's capped at the 5 times of the CDBG that you have entitled. So if you have $5 million entitled to your community and you don't have any other obligations, you can borrow up to 5 times.
So if it's $100 million, talking about 500 million?
Yeah, that it is capped at 500 million. Yeah.
Then how much is the CB or the CD, whatever it is, CD?
Community Development Block Grant, CDBG.
How much, is there a cap on that?
So each city receives a certain amount from the federal government. You're considered, if the city is over 50,000 people, then you get it. You become what they call an entitlement city. So the federal government determines how much money comes to your community, and so they will tell you, and it depends on the size of the city. So the smaller the city, typically the entitlement will be smaller. And then anything under 50,000, the state gets money, and then those non-entitlement cities can apply to the state for funding. But each city only gets direct funding, entitlement funding, depending on the size of their city.
Okay, and then secondly, what are the interest rates right now? I mean, is it LIBOR programs? Is it LIBOR plus?
That is a good question. Let me look that up and make sure, and I'll let you guys know.
Thank you.
It's usually based on the treasury, but I don't think they've done an issuance in a while. So let me look that up and I'll get that to you. I don't know
Thank,
that one off the top of my head.
all right, thanks.
Thanks very much. Next, the Honorable Gary Gardner.
Thank you. Good morning. I apologize for walking in the middle of your presentation, Ms. Sasser, because you raised an interesting point that I want to, hopefully you didn't cover before I got in. We'll blame Metrolink on that. I'll have to go next door. The Metrolink CEO is making a presentation this morning. But we're talking about the brownfields and areas like that. Does that have to be a federally declared brownfield site, or the way I'm looking at it, we have tremendous problems out in the desert, and particularly in my city, of homeless encampments of old RVs on top of our aquifer, dripping oil and human waste and all kinds of stuff out there. We just recently spent $250,000 cleaning up one camp. So I'm always looking for money to clean up some of that stuff. And I'd never thought of this angle. Is that an angle that we can use for remediation of illegal trash dumping and homeless encampments out in the desert?
That's a good question. So to be clear, brownfields are actually not federally designated. They are what you can perceive as contaminated. So for instance, we had a site that had cut corners, so it looked like an old gas station, but it was nothing. And so it was like, we think this was an old gas station, but we don't know. So we had to test it. And luckily it we did research on it. And it didn't. And so it was clean and we were able to move on. So brownfields are the perceived or real contamination. So you can apply for these funds to do assessments on it and to determine, what the contamination might be and everything. And then you can look to see if there's cleanup. Now, the question is, do you own the sites or does somebody else own the sites? I'm assuming because it's on the aquifer, you probably own the sites.
Well, it's either owned by the city or the water district or the conservation commission or one of those types of entities. Sometimes there are private sites, but for the most part, they're conservation lands.
And usually these funds are tended to be used for economic development and community development. So the idea is that it will be developed into something, whether or not it's housing or, something for economic development or a park or something like that. So making sure that there's a reuse at the end is something that the EPA wants to see with that. And so making sure it's an eligible use, it would be a conversation with probably CClear would be a really good advisor on that and being able to say whether or not that's something that you could pursue, but it's worth a question, definitely.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next, the Honorable Jeff Wood.
Thank you. I had a question on the SCAG support of funding for cities that are looking at it, EIFD. Was it just one city? The other, I think this is really good. We did one about a year ago and it's very complicated. It's very confusing. I'm on the board. It's like, but you can do it in about a year. I recommend that you do get a good consultant. I mean, one consultant was mentioned. I think most of us use that consultant. Ours is primarily to deal with our mall. But it would also be good to see down the road as we progress how these are really working out. And the last was, having been recently in Sacramento, I think there might be some talk about bringing back redevelopment in some form. And I think, we have our legislative intergovernmental or our government affairs. And I was elected the year right before it went. I don't really, I heard about redevelopment, but I didn't, it was dissolving as I got elected in 2011. But I'm wondering if we can get an update from our government affairs office to see if there's any discussion about redevelopment. We have a lot of new members of the assembly that came from local government. I've talked to our assembly member and I think it might be the time that we look at something, but again, just maybe in the future, we can get some updates on some of these EIFD projects to see how they're progressing.
And so to answer some parts of your question, we have funded several EIFD studies. I would say about 10 or so over the last few years. more substantively through the REAP funding that we received in REAP 1 and REAP 2. As I noted, we prepared a case study to highlight what we've done thus far. And so we'll make sure that goes out to all of you. It gives you the 101 as well as highlights some specific projects that we funded. Beyond that, we're currently working on putting out a procurement to hire a consultant to help us build out technical assistance resources for jurisdictions that want to look at EIFD. So the idea is, if you're in this exploratory phase or you want to know what are the types of studies or analysis I would need to do, just kind of figure out if it even works for me, these are the things you would do. If you're ready to roll and you know, I want to do it, what are the steps? What does the scope look like? What should you be looking for your consultant? We want to have that. So we want to make sure that as we're learning and doing all of these EIFDs, that we're kind of building out resources for jurisdictions across the region to take the wealth of information and also push out more resources for you all to explore that at the local level. So that's something that we're working on bringing a consultant on board to do. And once we get them going, we'll definitely bring them back to talk about that work.
Thank you very much. Jeff, anything more or no?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally, the only other part I see raised to my left is the Vice Chair of Rocky Roads, Honorable Rocky Roads.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for Diana, and it has it goes along with Gary and John Marish's question. Brownfields, in my mind, were always large swaths of land that needed some sort of cleanup. But your example that you used in the presentation was a burned down building, and then you also talked about gas stations. I inquired with our city manager, what possible other brownfields would we have in our city? And I'm wondering if you could give some examples other than gas stations of opportunities that cities without large swaths of vacant oil land or homeless encampments might look at.
No, that's a good question, and it's a misconception that they're large. What you're talking about is what they call Superfund sites. So prior to working for Grow America, I actually worked for the city of Sacramento, which has one large Superfund site that you guys might know of as the Rail Yards, which is a huge site. But in addition to that, we also had this tiny site that was a former dry cleaner. A dry cleaner, especially the one that's been around since the 80s, not even the 60s, 80s, they were using a lot of chemicals and getting dumped and all of that stuff. Auto repair shops. I was helping the city of Salinas in Northern California also with doing assessments of an old auto repair shop. And they were having to make sure that, because the oil gets dumped down the things. And the site that I'm talking about had lead and asbestos in the walls that got exposed. That is considered a brownfield. One of the sites in Sacramento that I also worked on was a former skeet shooting site. So skeet back in the day was a bunch of lead things that people would shoot. So it was lead from not only the bullets, but lead from the skeet that was falling into the ground that just sat piled up and piled up and piled up. And it can seep into the ground when it rains and all of that stuff. So there's lots of different things, stuff that affects the water that gets transferred down to another site. There's many different things. So Superfund sites, which are the federally designated sites, aren't funded under this program. They are funded under a different program. Brownfields are much smaller, that's why they're infill sites. They are going to be stuff that had something on it prior that maybe was contaminated, maybe wasn't, depending on what was there. So what a phase 1 assessment does is it comes in and looks at what was there, went from the beginning of use of it. They do map looking. They go and talk with the current owner. If they can find a prior owner, they talk to the prior owner. They walk the site to see what's there. And then they do an assessment and say whether or not they think additional testing is needed. So does that help?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. The Honorable Joe Baca.
Thank you very much. It's, I guess a question for Diane or... Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah, it's a question or a comment for Diane. I understand, in terms of economic development and in reference to the CDBG funds that are used by each of the cities. I know that Rialto used its funds effectively in terms of having an all-inclusive playground being done for kids with disability or autism that's been done. But then we also have the additional funds, and I don't know if it falls under this category, but something that we should look at because this is money that's coming from the federal level, is that 20% for community projects goes towards administrative costs. I just think that's too high, and that's something that should be reduced, and more money should be used for community projects that we have within our own cities versus spending 20% on administrative costs that can be utilized when we get those grants that come into each and every one of our cities under those requirements. So that should be changed. Something that we should look at the possibility of lowering that percentage that goes towards administrative costs that can be utilized more effectively at the local level for community projects or for other projects under economic development.
Thank you very much. And seeing no more, well, I'll ask a couple questions. Our city has utilized for years this CDBG grants program, and it's not just good, it's been extremely helpful to so many. So just to comment on that, I want to thank Anika, Diana, and Jeanette for their presentation and ask, I guess this will be for Diana, from your work with different jurisdictions that are and funding sources, what's the biggest mistake that you've seen jurisdictions make when leveraging community development funding?
I think sometimes when you don't have a plan, I think if you go in and just assume that, it'll get done, I think you don't need to do the full planning document and stuff, but you do need to have an idea of what the community wants and having those communications with them. I also think that, making sure that you know how you're going to use the funds and stuff. I think one of the biggest things is you apply for funds and you don't know how you're going to use them. Again, it comes down to planning, thinking how you're going to plan things out.
Great, thank you. And then Jeanette, I have to ask you a question then too. For jurisdictions looking to leverage community development funding, where do you advise they begin?
Again, the feasibility analysis was really, really helpful. Helped drive the message to not only our city council, but to the county board. I think it's important to, like Diana said, is having a plan in place that can help accelerate the growth of Old Town. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you very much. And before we go to the online questions, we have a message, Madam Clerk, from Imperial SCAG office, and it might relate to one or more of the individuals who will ask questions. Okay, I guess the first person is the Honorable Deborah Parada. Is your question online?
Yeah, no, I do have a question, and I also wanted everybody to know that I'm here. I wasn't here for a roll call. In regards to the brownfield presentation and the CDBG monies, those monies keep getting less and less every year. So are these additional monies? And we have a General Electric plant that was in operation for over 70 years that we would love to be able to do something with. So, but our money, I mean, this year we only got like 1.3 million. So are these additional monies that we can use?
No, I mean, yes, you're right. They are the amount of money that's is decreasing. The EPA money is competitive every year, so it's actually just recently closed about a week ago for the competitive round for this next year. So it won't be open again until at the end of this year. It was only delayed because of the federal government closure. Otherwise, it would have closed last year. So that one's competitive every year. So it's open, and if you want assessment money or cleanup money, you can apply for it. It's good to have a contact at CClear, and I can provide some contacts with CClear so that you can keep in touch with them and make sure that they can give you that information. With CDBG, the Section 108 isn't in addition, but you can apply for a loan, and then that gets you 5 times your amount. So yes, it's not an addition because you get your entitlement, but your Section 108 allows you to leverage your entitlement.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And on our Zoom call, we did get a question from our Imperial SCAG office. Does the participant from that office want to ask our panelists that question?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask, in dealing with downtown revitalization plans. How do you get private property owners to participate in this revitalization effort?
So again, we held over 20 meetings. I think it's even more meeting with individual property owners, really addressing their concerns. We worked with a separate consultant to create the plan, but really trying to address the needs and the concerns of not only the business owners, but the residents that are down there, modify and make a plan that's something that could be implemented, something that is supportive, and really engage the community every step of the way. For every, we've had multiple charrettes, we go to chamber meetings, we would go to business owners meetings and really kind of just walk them through the plan. Ultimately, when it was adopted by the city council, there was zero opposition. We had a lot of people coming in support of the plan because they've been with us throughout the entire process. So it was very, very successful in adopting the plan.
One of the problems that we are having is we have a lot of remote property owners that don't live in the area. And so getting their cooperation would be difficult, even though you put in the effort towards public education. These private property owners who live out of the area would be difficult to engage them.
Yeah, I would suggest having Zoom conference calls with them, opening it up, allowing them, really reaching out to them, making an effort, and ensuring that staff does due diligence and reaching out and contacting them, and suggesting Zoom conference calls and having a presentation and showing them just the initial stages of the plan and getting them involved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, can you please identify your name and title, please?
Yes, John Grass, Brawley City Council.
Thank you very much. Seeing no more hands raised virtually and no one in person, we'll move on to the next item. And again, thank you to all three presenters and speakers. One of the SCAG's key responsibilities is to adopt a regional transportation plan / sustainable community strategy, or RTP-SCS, every 4 years. With the last plan adopted by the Regional Council in April 2024, staff has begun work on the next plan, Connect SoCal 2050, which needs to be adopted in 2028. I now call on SCAG Regional Planner Camille Gariba to provide a presentation outlining the process and timeline for developing Connect SoCal 2050. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Shapiro, and good morning, members of the CEHD Committee. Chair Shapiro stole my opening line, so it's all good. But
pretend you didn't hear it. Go.
As mentioned, we are in the process of beginning our RTP SCS process, the Regional Transportation Plan and Sustainable Communities Strategy. And just getting into some of our requirements, we must update it every 4 years to maintain eligibility for federal funding. The costs of projects and programs must match the expected revenues. Throughout the process, we need to engage stakeholders and the public, demonstrate transportation conformity, have a horizon year of at least 20 years into the future, and achieve certain greenhouse gas emission reduction targets from light and medium vehicles. To meet those requirements, the plan includes components like a vision, goals, and guiding policies, performance measures, a financial plan, forecasts, as well as a list of transportation projects. This slide further articulates the RTP-SCS requirements. The RTP, the conformity, the performance monitoring, the Title VI, those are all related to federal requirements we have. And with the Sustainable Community Strategy component, that is our key state requirement related to the greenhouse gas emission targets. One key challenge we have this cycle is that the California Air Resources Board has initiated another target setting update, which is required by SB 375 every 8 years. CARB must adopt the new targets by fall 2026, and this would directly impact our next Connect SoCal update. CARB was expected to release draft targets last fall, but so far have not brought those forward. The current targets have been challenging to meet as we get closer to the 2035 target year, and SCAG and many other MPOs have asked CARB to maintain the targets as previously adopted and focus on identifying resources and support to regions to implement the GHG reduction strategies. This slide shows our preliminary milestones for development of Connect SoCal 2050. Last year, staff started on the foundations and frameworks for this upcoming cycle that include beginning model improvements, adopting the sub-regional SES framework and guidelines, which outline a process for subregions to opt in to doing their own SES if desired. And as of the deadline last Friday, none of the subregions provided that indication. And then we also drafted our public participation plan. Here now in the winter, staff is seeking approval for the public participation plan this afternoon at the Regional Council. And I'm giving this process overview to all our policy committees. As we move into the spring, we will be engaging more with partners and stakeholders around the region on plan development elements related to data collection and policy development. The local data exchange process will be launching, which is the primary opportunity for local jurisdictions to provide input into the development of the regional growth forecast, and ensures that the regional planning is informed by locally validated data and reflective of local growth visions. We'll be revisiting policies as adopted in Connect SoCal 2024, diving into discussions on ways to update them, considering the key issues and challenges we identify as areas of focus for this cycle. And we'll be bringing those discussions to the various working groups and the policy committees. And then finally, the project list solicitation process is expected to begin by this summer. This is where we collect transportation project and program information from the county transportation commissions, typically long-range transportation plans, transit plans, local option sales measure plan, implementation plans serve as the foundation for the project submitted to SCAG, and will be a key component in informing the project list for Connect SoCal 2050. And on a last note, I would like to just acknowledge that SCAG will be starting the 7th cycle of the Regional Housing Needs Assessment this year. And per recent legislation, the RHNA process is beginning 1 year earlier, with SCAG receiving the RHND, the needs determination from HCD by fall of this year. And our housing policy staff are developing a RHNA schedule with consideration for coordination between RHNA and Connect SoCal, and we'll share that schedule in the near future. And as mentioned, we will have a lot of discussions in the coming months, and I'll be returning to you all to review the vision, goals, and regional planning policies from Connect SoCal 2024, and discuss some new plan development elements that we are thinking of. And with that, I'm glad to take any questions.
Thank you very much. And I heard a rumble of excitement when you talked about RHNA. Let me ask if there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this item.
Mr. Chair, I do not see any members of the public wishing to participate.
I'll now entertain comments from members of the CEHD, and we'll start with the Honorable Wendy Bucknam.
Thank you. When do we expect to get the total number from the state?
For RHNA, is that what you're referring to?
Oh, sorry, I should be more specific.
Yeah.
I apologize. I was very focused on the RHNA aspect. Yeah, for RHNA. Oh, yes, please.
Yes, hello, good morning. Mayon Johnson, Housing Department Manager, known as the RHNA, or I run the RHNA hotline. But we expect the latest they can statutorily give it to us is October this year. Obviously, we'd like to engage with them much sooner than that. So they do have to start consulting with us by August, but again, we'll try to develop capacity to make sure we engage much sooner.
Please let me know if you need any help engaging.
With a smile on your face.
And I have a second question specifically on the CARB, on a question on CARB. Do we have any sense of what the CARB staff is considering? If there's a possibility that our region's target could potentially be higher, and how that would work with with the 2024 SDS?
With the 2024 SES or the upcoming?
The upcoming, excuse me.
Yeah.
I think I got a typo here. Sorry.
Yeah, so as mentioned, we're closely monitoring the target setting process, and there were a few workshops, there was a workshop last year where CARB presented a couple options of higher targets and such, but there has been no indication on which way they're going at this point. And we are waiting patiently because of the impact it has, as mentioned, on this plan, because we are getting into the data analysis now about the greenhouse gas reduction strategies, and we want to make sure that that reduction adds up to whatever the target is. And for now, we are only able to work towards what we know, which is the current targets, and are being flexible and trying to find ways to find more greenhouse gas reductions if possible, in the event that there might be higher targets.
Well, I thank you for that, and I'm glad that we're engaged early and ready to provide input. And I know we have people that understand this, that are serving on CARB, and one person in particular from our group, Mayor Patricia Lockdawson, I believe, is going through a confirmation right now, potentially, to serve on CARB, which is fabulous because she gets us and gets the common sense approach on what's realistic. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, the Honorable Tanya Doby.
Thank you. All right, this might be a silly question, but it's my question, so I'm gonna stand beside it. The Connect SoCal and local transportation options, would those include, I'm a small city and I'm used to not having all things available to me. We have a local transportation, we use a circuit, right? Would that be something open to a funding option through SoCal Connect, or does it have to be their EV vehicles? Or does it have to be something?
Because I think that might fall under some of the programmatic funding that we have, if it's like a shuttle service. Is that what I understand it to be? And so that if it gets funding through any of the sources that we are talking about through the plan, then it would probably be a programmatic item that we consider. Good to know. Yes. And then
I said I get some funding. I need more funding.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking for the more funding.
Yeah, so that's where, we engage with the CTCs, and you can relay to your CTC kind of that priority for your city. And we put together the list of projects and programs in the plan. Oh, the County Transportation Commission.
That would be OCTA.
County. Thank you very much. Next, the Honorable Sheila Rossi.
So I have two questions. First, starting with the CARB. We actually looked at this last night under our agenda for vehicle replacement. One of the issues that we see is operational fit. So the technology just not being there yet to accommodate some of the operational needs of, especially for the larger vehicles, for public works vehicles, and for fire as well. So I'm looking to make sure that the mandates that they're bringing in are realistic, and really consider, is the technology there to actually meet the needs. Even, we had a police car fleet that we completely went all electric for, and the challenges have been that they are struggling on operational fit. Can we fit, people that are being transported? It can only take one. So even if you have two people, you need to have two police cars brought out. Those are the kind of the challenges that we're seeing, on top of the premium that it costs. So I think the analysis was for that a fleet of 20 cars to meet these kind of requirements. It's about $1.5 million additional cost. that we're seeing as opposed to having gone for more traditional vehicles. So going back to that unfunded mandate piece is having state and beginning to have an understanding of what each of these decisions is costing cities. And each one is coming out of our general fund and our operating budgets while we're not seeing huge revenue increases. The other piece I wanted to go to was specifically on the RHNA and SB 79. I think there's a lot of curiosity and interest here because SCAG is supposed to be developing the maps. We're supposed to be getting HCD information guidance by June 1st, while we're supposed to deliver plans by July 1st. And actually, if we wanted to do alternative plans, technically we need to do it by March 1st before receiving guidance. So I'm curious to see where SCAG is on developing those maps, because there's a lot of questions as to the specific pieces, but then how it's going to interplay with the RHNA numbers, and then how it's going to interplay with transportation, specifically around BRTs. No one has been able to answer the question on what defines a BRT stop, because I know in some cities they will be shocked to realize that that they have a BRT, that they will have a BRT by 2035 because it was presented in a plan in a regional body in 2024, and they don't currently have a BRT, but they're going to find out soon that they do, and they have, like in our city of 3.2 miles, 3.4 miles, we have 8 stops. So I think that's been something that has been like very vague, and cities need that clarity. So I know that you guys had this thrown on you by the legislature, but just curious of where the status is on that information. Thank you.
So as it relates to SB 79, for those who may not be familiar with the legislation essentially creates streamlining of housing development TOD near TOD stops and zones. The legislation requires that metropolitan planning organizations like SCAG develop a TOD map that shows an SB 79 map that highlights the TOD stops, the zones, and the tiers. The legislation as written has several terms that are not clear that preclude our ability to develop a map. So we have been engaging with HCD to request that per the legislation, they provide the guidance that is necessary for SCAG and other metropolitan planning organizations to develop the TOD stop and zone map so that jurisdictions can assess how this may or may not apply to them, and then assess if they're allowing the legislation to apply as it is, developing a TOD alternate plan, etc. We have been abundantly clear with everyone, and everyone is aware that the timeline is very tight, given that the effective date of the legislation is July 1st. And so we expect and hope to get clarity from HCD on those terms in the next few weeks. That is what we're hoping for. We would then develop the map. We would do some engagement, and we would bring it to the regional council. So there will be engagement and visibility on this. We have submitted the questions on the terms, but these are critical to ensure that we are developing a defensible, accurate map, and that we have consistency across the state.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And I just want to make sure that you're good on that. Great. Thank you. And the Honorable John Mearsh. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to throw out an idea, something we've done in our city that supports the goal of greenhouse gas reductions. We hear and we know with bills like SB 79, but in general, that the state has more or less eliminated minimums for residential developments. And that in theory means that the people who are going to be living in those places, SB 79 projects, are actually going to be using public transportation. They will not be having cars. Cars won't be an amenity, because otherwise what you're going to be faced with is not enough parking, people circling around the streets looking for parking, which adds to greenhouse gas emissions, and which is, of course, against the intent of the legislation. So what we have done is in our city, and it took us a while, but fortunately we got it done, is we passed an ordinance that says that buildings that are underparked according to our code one, will not be eligible for on-street permit parking, and two, the landlord or person who's selling the unit or marketing the unit has to let the potential tenants know about that. So when you're going to a place and, you know, you're talking about renting an apartment, they have to say, just so you know, there is no parking space with this, and therefore, and you will not be eligible for on-street permit parking. And in theory, what that should do is that should ensure that the theory that people actually may not need parking, and there are a lot of people who don't need parking, are going to be the actual ones who live there. Because otherwise you could be faced with a situation where you have people who say, well, I don't have a parking there, I think I can get it on street. And it's musical chairs for parking, which is of course terrible for the environment. So that's something that can be done. And again, as part of our ordinance is that the landlords are responsible. It doesn't only have to be in the lease, but when they're marketing the units, they have to allow people to know, just so people are not surprised. So that's something I think that could help. You know, it's just an idea out there, but if anyone is interested, we're happy to share our ordinance, which I've been working on for almost a couple of years now and finally passed in the last couple of months. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great comments and questions, and that I'm sure a lot of people would like to see that, John. Seeing no hands raised online, and no other comments here. Thank you, Camille, for the presentation.
Thank you.
I will not steal any more of your thunder, I promise. Move on to the chair's report, and we'll start out by recognition of our brand new CHD committee member online from Chino Hills, the Honorable Cynthia Moran. So welcome, Cynthia, if you hear us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you in person in the upcoming meetings.
Yes.
Great. The lasting affordability program call is now closed. In November 2025, this committee and SCAG's regional council approved the release of a second notice of funds available for the lasting affordability program, which opened officially on November 17th, 2025. Very short window. Through this action, SCAG made $20 million in REAP 2.0 funding available to eligible organizations across the region to support established housing trusts, funds, and catalyst funds that expand financing tools and lending products to create and preserve affordable housing across a range of housing types and income levels, including households at or below medium income. The application period for this program closed on January 20th, 2026. Award recommendations are expected to be presented at the SCAG Regional Council for consideration and approval in March of 2026. And I just want to take a quick moment and give a big thank you to those who do all the hard work. I get to do a little bit of fun and easy work here, but to Jonathan, Elizabeth, Carmen, and of course our Counselor Richard for all their hard work, and give them a big round of applause for all their work. I'm good. All right, now we go on to fun things again. Chair and vice chair elections. We're at that time of the year. During the March Community Economic and Human Development Committee meetings, we will hold elections for the 2026-2027 chair and vice chair positions. If you are interested in nominating someone or yourself, please reply to aguilarm@scag.ca.gov and submit the name of the individual by no later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 25th. So that's coming up soon. So if you're interested, it's the best committee by far. Sorry to anybody who's in another committee, but you all participate, you're all active, good questions, good comments, and you keep me on my toes. So if you want to come up here and join Rocky, it won't be me. Please submit your applications. Nominees must be regional council members to be considered for the chair or vice chair positions. And the term of office for the newly elected chair and vice chair will commence upon the adjournment of the General Assembly business meeting, which is May 7th, 2026. On January 20th, 2026, the Office of the Regional Council Services sent out the initial email to each of the communities with details about the nomination process and the deadline for submittal. And if you have questions, staff will be able to help you tremendously. And that email I gave you was Maggie Aguilar's, by the way, but I probably didn't speak well. Turning to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I am happy to announce that SCAG's 2026 Student Showcase is now open for submissions. The SCAG Students Showcase challenges students to create posters and story maps that illustrate the possibilities of open data to tell compelling stories, create insights, and showcase plans and projects. Competition finalists receive unparalleled opportunities to demonstrate their expertise to a large, influential network of skilled practitioners and future colleagues. Winners also receive cash prizes. Finalists for our showcase will receive complimentary event registration, hotel accommodation, and admission to our 2026 Regional Conference and General Assembly in Palm Desert on May 7th through May 8th. At the conference, participants will present their work to elected officials and industry leaders from across Southern California. Submissions are due March 12th. For more information, please visit the 2026 SCAG Student Showcase website to learn more and to register. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for those who have, most of us have been, but those who haven't, the General Assembly on 7th and 8th of May is fantastic. It's a lot of fun, a great opportunity to connect with people in other committees, other cities, other areas, and share ideas and have a great time and learn as well. So I highly recommend you attend. Member announcements. Anybody wish to make an announcement? Anything fun? No. Okay, nothing online. All right, we'll adjourn this meeting. It is 10:56, so we're out early, which is always the goal. Till March 5th, 2026 is our next regular scheduled meeting. Thanks so much.